So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Laxmi and Andrew for BFSI in AI.
Artificial intelligence is gaining traction across all industries, including the banking, financial services and insurance industry. In fact, we'll call it FSI for now, just to keep it simple. Although AI adoption is at the nascent stage in financial services, its potential to positively impact the FSI industry is tremendous. In the last couple of years, the finance and banking sectors have increasingly deployed and implemented AI technologies, and such technologies have been implemented for front-end and back-end processes, offering solutions for both financial and business management operations. Today, my name is Andrew Addison, technologist at Boston, and today I'll be talking about this with Laxmi Nageswari. Laxmi has a background in artificial intelligence and data science, and I have a software engineering background in financial services industry, going back about 30 years, working for major banks and a few hedge funds. And together, we will discuss this rapidly changing world and what it may have in store for the future. Today's discussion, the agenda, is to focus on how AI is reshaping the industry and why this is so significant today. This is impacting fundamental target operating models of most businesses. There's a need to make our data work harder than ever before. In many cases, this will involve revisiting data, creating new knowledge and intelligence. We will discuss how businesses in the FSI are reinventing themselves, the drivers behind it, and thoughts on how this will likely affect everyone's future. So, starting with a magnifying glass on digital payments, which seems a good place to start as any, to get a handle on how this is changing the banking and financial services industry. A massive amount of banking industry is handled digitally, combined with heavy regulation since the near meltdown of banking in 2007, 2008. There are a number of opportunities and challenges. How do we make this data work for both the customer and help the bank run efficiently? The demand's there, and there's huge amounts of data to work with. And this is the piece that is pressure that is transforming the services rapidly. Novel new methods are required. Software to help manage this is an absolute necessity. This is where AI techniques come into play. This is a key driver in its transformation. For instance, according to Mordor Intelligence, the estimated share of AI in the fintech market was 7.27 billion in 2019 and expected to reach 35 billion by 2025. That's a compound annual growth rate of 31.5%. The CAGR of 31.5% can be witnessed during the forecast period from 2020 to 2025. The major players of this financial tech area are IBM, Intel, Microsoft, IPsoft, and Next. And note that this CAGR is reasonably conservative. Even then, it's increasing by roughly a third every year, and there's no sign of it slowing down in the near future. And now, where are we heading? We're heading towards a cashless world. Everything is going to be digital. There will be huge amounts of data driving off the back of it. Now, this particular chart is only a few years old, but it's still the same. The balance is greater. The cash shrinks, the digital money increases, and this is the piece that's driving data. And as we move to a completely cashless world, digital payments methods are diversifying. Some are linked to media accounts, others link directly to bank accounts to make payments, such as contactless payments. And there's a lot of cross-links between accounts and the identity of the customer. For instance, a bank account to postcodes, demographics, and all that other kind of data you have. In essence, there's a digital twin for most people, a profile to help businesses understand the customers better, making for better customer experience. Also, in a legal sense, with the likes of GDPR regulation, the consumer is protected, and companies have to hold on this data. They have to prove that they are preserving the integrity. Again, more and more data. FSI is rapidly adopting fintech to handle this new wave of digitization. In 2019 alone, there was over 73.5 billion invested in the first 3 quarters. It's a huge commitment, but banks are compelled to do this. Without this transformation, they will not be able to meet demand, comply with the regulators, and manage risk. And that's risk not only as in financial risk, but fraud, reputational, and even governance and data quality. They're all critical pieces. Again, the data is there. It needs extracting in high volume, and you simply cannot do this by hand. AI techniques, statistical analysis, machine learning, natural language processing all come in play to handle this. So how about some real world fraud examples? During June 2018, Monzo gained significant public interest after fraud analysts with the bank spotted the signs of and publicly announced a Ticketmaster data breach in April 2018. And that was before Ticketmaster had even spotted it themselves, and 2 months before Ticketmaster admitted to it. And Revolut, in common with traditional financial institutions, uses algorithms to identify money laundering, fraud, and other criminal activity. But unlike the rest of the banking industry, Revolut's algorithms additionally trigger the automated suspension of accounts, and that's actually quite popular now. Revolut explains that the system is programmed to temporarily lock an account and place it in a queue until one of the compliance agents can review the case. Very, very powerful. That's the consumer protected at source. But when you identify the need to use AI, it's not just a matter of pressing an AI button. It doesn't work that way. The key is to use a series of tools and techniques to make that happen. From the bank and insurance company's perspective, there are a number of ways they can and need to engage, and this shows what they value the most. As mentioned before, anomaly detection is advantageous to all and immediate benefit. And there's a lot of work to do, but you can't do it all at once. And as you see from the graph, the biggest drivers are tackling fraud and unusual spending patterns, default risk and creditworthiness. This is a large international driver from improved regulatory pressure on anti-financial crime. Banks are legally compelled to comply with these directives to allow them to operate. Penalties for non-compliance is punitive. Banks have little or no choice but to follow this path. And while many FSI organisations have started their AI journey, there's still a long way to go to realise the full potential across different lines of business. It's still in its infancy in that sense. In the capital markets, you can use it to optimise portfolios, to minimise the costs of managing them, improving back office payment efficiency, so you might simplify things. So you do as few transactions as necessary because a transaction costs money. Anomaly detection for unusual payments and behaviours. And there's a massive regulatory push on knowing your client. You could be dealing with someone that's actually involved with terrorist policies, working in living in jurisdictions that a country will not allow you to operate with, and also for regulatory reporting to prove that you know that you are managing your money properly. That's also driven through layering of companies through the Dodd-Frank directive, uncleared margining rules, which need to reduce, part of Dodd-Frank actually, to reduce the layering of corporate structures, and they all have to be spelled out. And also data quality plays a massive part in this. In the directive called the FRTB, the quality of the data inputs are actually essential, because that's how affects how you will actually go about pricing your trades and your models. And finally, there's catastrophic scenario analysis. Again, so you want to create scenarios of stresses in the markets where, which you haven't really thought of, conditions that may put the company, the bank, at risk. But actually, this is all about protecting the customer at the end of the day. And in insurance, you've got natural language processing for claims and catastrophe claims. But on these documents and what gets written down, they need to do some analysis on the way things are actually said. So it's quite a big growth area, natural language processing. That's also got lots of value in social media, and it's used heavily for that. And legal. In retail, you're again looking for payment anomalies, credit rating, and importantly for everyone, tailored experience and product placement. There's a massive part of retail industry and e-commerce is that kind of personal touch, selling people the kind of things which they want to buy or not, a lot of case. And in the mortgage industry, there's credit rating and worthiness. Now, chatbots are very, very popular. I personally don't really like them that much, but they're improving now. But it's becoming harder to tell if you're talking to a person or talking to a machine, which is kind of weird, but that's the way things are. So now we have all these different ways and different approaches and different parts of the business lines. How do we go about adopting it to transform that landscape? It's got a tremendous potential to transform the BFSI landscape and wide-ranging applications across the front, middle and back office, corporate functions like finance, human resources and procurement, IT operations, data centers and application maintenance. And this becomes a bit of futurology. We may have an end of manual underwriting and have just-in-time lending paradigms. And future fintech industries revolve around AI that automates the financial lives of customers and improves financial results. So it can perform real-time analysis and make smart decisions. And it might just trigger a just-in-time lending model, and the customers will be given the best insurance policies at the lowest prices. In fact, that's written into law now for people with existing policies in the UK, for instance. Whereas the underwriters, lenders and money managers in any industry are at risk if it contains the crunching numbers to estimate a return. Also, the emergence of fintech, cloud and infrastructure. So infrastructure as a service, massively popular. And in fact, even further than that, they have function as a service. We have these serverless type of architectures. Now, a real business as a service platform, a managed service for developers and data scientists to run machine learning models. So the idea is this to ease the workflow between the data scientist, the engineer, and more importantly, the customer. The next driver, reduce financial crime, which can be done, like I said, with natural language process and compliance automation. There's a massive space in here. A lot of push for AI for these types of initiatives are actually happening now in a lot of the big banks. And the risk and compliance function suffers from a massive data load and exhaustive regulated demands, as mentioned before. And with natural language processing, it can help understand government regulations and create sensible policy tests. So this is where it touches on the governance of a bank and its ability to operate effectively. And also network analysis, network analytics. In this one, you may be going through dodgy networks, or you may be actually getting cybercrime attacks on you. There are intelligent ways to deal with these particular situations. But it doesn't stop there. There is a massive push also on facial recognition, video processing, voice recognition as well, which can be used either as understanding what people are saying, like you have with Alexa, or you may actually want to say, can I pay £100 to my friend? That's in its infancy. So we're in a new age of intelligent applications, and they're purpose-built, and they're contextual signals like hardware, sensors, locations, where you were, previous usage, predictive computation, all start applying, and these are in the new areas where these are going to be. And customer loyalty and customer retention has always been an important thing, but now there are new, more powerful tools to handle this type of stuff. And we cannot forget blockchain. Now we've got a distributed integrity of transactions, and this allows for a lot of freedom and opportunity, and digital payments. And finally, doing away with intermediaries completely. You know your client, you can optimize the path of the money from A to B and reduce the amount of effort that you actually need to do it. And then this transformation, interoperability will be the next norm. The manual process will entirely be automated. So finally, and this cannot be underestimated, a lot of these are to create the tools for collaborative AI and collective solutions, bringing together engineers and scientists to apply their disciplines in a streamlined and effective way. And there are many solutions in that space for pipelines. There's a very good one, for instance, called Kubeflow, and data science and business informatics. It's all part of the picture. So what techniques do we actually use to do these? This is a good point where we can talk with Laxmi, who's got some more expertise in this space, but at least at the point you can see the context with which we're actually applying these particular types of technologies.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's start with the data ecosystem. It's a collection of information, analytics, and applications used to capture and analyze data. Data ecosystems provide companies with data that they rely on to understand their customers and to make better operations and marketing decisions. We believe banks and financial institutions have a competitive advantage when it comes to data because of the quantity and quality of data they hold. The key is to create value by using data for smart interactions and developing digital native products. Banks are undergoing digital transformation to produce digital-friendly products. But while we are talking about digital transformation, has become imperative for incumbents, real changes have been slow, and many have had to make consistent and suitable and bold moves towards technology-enabled transformations. The accelerated pace of technological innovations have given birth to new business models at an even faster speed. In this rapid changing landscape, the competitive advantage will come from being fast and nimble, and banks must embrace digital forces to innovate in smaller, bolder cycles. Data will be key for institutions to improve customer experience, and banks will need to figure out how they want to utilize platforms and the data behind them in order to grow both internal and external data lakes. Coming to conceptual mapping, artificial intelligence consists of use of computers and algorithms to augment and stimulate human intelligence. AI enables adaptive pattern recognitions using large volume of data and modern statistical methods to give the best guess answer to any narrowly defined and definitive problem statements. Digitalization includes automation of processes, collection of data, profiling from various sources, and analysis of the collected data through machine learning and AI algorithms. AI is reshaping the building blocks of success in financial services. Eventually, AI will transform every one of these building blocks of success in financial services. Technology will make operational efficient enough that asset size, although still important, will no longer be sufficient on its own to build a successful business. As a result, competition to achieve scale of data flow through will be more important to sustain cost advantages. Customers will stay with an institution not because it's hard to walk away, but because their benefits are better there than anywhere else. Process efficiency will result from the interplay of human and artificial strengths. Evolution of machine learning in BFSI. Automated systems collect data. AI systems seek to understand it. Together, they are the future of businesses. The key considerations include customer service, fraud detection, trade settlements, recruitment drives, transformations, primarily machine-driven processes. The specific use cases includes upselling and reselling to customers by giving out customized offers, developing a detailed 360 degrees profiles with prospects databases, developing fraud models, developing credit score models to identify target customers and undertaking better decisions. The key algorithms including collaborative filters for recommendations, distance-based algorithms for clustering, test mining, deep learning, and gradient boosted trees for fraud detection, etc. Before we summarize, I would like to take you through the key challenges in implementing an AI-based system in BFSI domain. Mainly, I can look at bias and discrimination, how to control and check it. Bringing historical data under preview of regulator to avoid the perception of historical bias due to reliance on historical data. The regulator could bring the treatment of data already held by banks under its ambit, as well as data newly collected through AI solutions. Secondly, we can look at the adoption and integration, incentivizing the customer's choices, maybe one of the best options we have. A well-planned shift of components of different services to an AI-based model, in addition to creating incentives to users to choose use of AI services over human-based equivalents, could encourage the initial take-ups of AI services that is needed to begin to build longer-term consumer trust. Another very key challenge is the development and innovation in this space. Having sufficient infrastructure is another key challenge with the existing infrastructures of the financial service industry. They should have a proper infrastructure to begin the AI deployment into their organization strategies. Other than emphasizing on the speech recognition is still a key hurdle that AI is trying to overcome, as the AI's ability to understand and accurately respond not only depends on how a word is pronounced, but also how a question or statement is phrased. Open data sources, platforms, and standards is the other challenge. Using open data and open sources platforms can enable further innovations and accountability. Privacy and security by design should be a defaulter into AI solutions. To summarize on this webinar, AI is here to stay, grow, and change the BFSI landscape forever. Artificial intelligence is changing business processes and customer-facing services in the financial sector. It is also being used to meet regulatory compliances, detect fraud, and assess individual credit worthinesses. The application of AI has the potential to create more efficient business processes, offer personalized services, and assist in large goals such as financial inclusion. Thank you, friends, for attending our webinar. Now we will move ahead for the question and answer session.
Thanks, Laxmi and Andrew. That was really interesting. Just a reminder to our viewers, make sure you pop your questions in the Q&A tool as displayed here. I'm going to kick off. So, Andrew, I think this is probably one for you. Hang on a second. Sorry, I've just seemed to have locked out of the tool. Technology always lets you down on the day. One of the major issues in South Africa is banking, or rather the lack thereof, particularly for citizens living in rural areas. Can AI be used to help with this?
Well, there's infrastructure, I suppose, and I've been more in corporate rather than retail, but I do know there's an Africa-wide financial inclusion initiative that's happened across all the sub-Saharan area, sub-Saharan parts of Africa. I can't even say that. Sorry. And there are about 400 million people without access, and over the mobile networks, only about 70% of the population have access. I think there's a lot of cash dominance in Africa, and actual physical cash. So moving to a cashless form would actually make a lot of sense, because it would reduce risk. But the ways that you can actually deal with that really are going to be through the likes of credit or debit type of cards, maybe through ATMs. AI could be used to do with where you would access your own data through your own identity. Possibly biometrics, I suppose, is one potential way. I think someone commented on facial recognition. I think that has less reliability than fingerprints in many ways. But there would need to be the trouble is actually identifying someone and making sure that you can link that person to the account. You could have ATMs at a distance, and if people are not managing cash and not doing it physically just through cards and things with some central points to administer it, then that might be a good way of doing it, because then there'll be more security with money that's being held. So there's the kind of things that have been going through my mind in that particular space. And as soon as it starts getting into some kind of banking system, then there's other techniques that can be put on there, even maybe to do a strategy of where you put the next bits of mobile networks, for instance. But yeah, it's a tricky one, because you're in a mobile, you're in a remote rural location where you don't have access to any of the internets and stuff. You know, how do you manage that? There's going to have to be some access points for that. I hope that answers the question a bit.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. And in terms of the size of organisations that are adopting AI, are smaller banking institutions able to be a bit more nimble with these things, or is it really the big guys that are leading the way?
Oh no, most definitely. In fact, a lot of the fintech companies, a lot of the small ones, are exploiting that, because when you've got a big bank, it's got loads and loads of verticals in there. It's like a big horizontal thing. It's got lots of departments for everything. But when you get companies like Revolut and Monzo that are dealing with payment processing and customer experience, then it's a completely different kind of game, because they can do focused AI initiatives on individual people. And actually, you see it on financial services and things other than banking. So, for instance, like Tesco Club Card will give you a personalized experience, because they know the kind of transaction that you're doing and can use it to help either place products or help the person buy which they want to buy. So yes, absolutely, it's from small to large, but I think there's more agility and more flexibility for the smaller fintech companies, and I think that's one of the big things that's driving this, because the innovation comes out of that, not burdened by regulation as much, still regulated.